Hello! I want to give you guys just a broad overview of German culture with this video. So it's hard to pin down exactly what German culture is. We all know that culture is extremely hard to define because it's this shared system of beliefs and traditions and behaviors that get passed down with some certain group of people. So when it comes to German culture, you have some of the smaller things we've talked about, like the formal and informal differences between forms of address, like du for informal and Sie for formal. And that is sort of a very mechanical, behavioral aspect of the culture. But then you also have other things like a general value placed on Ordnung and being punctual, just things running smoothly, that kind of bureaucratic stereotype that we often think of when we're thinking of Germans. And I think a lot of Germans think of that about themselves too. Actually, I know that. So when you're talking about German culture and you're going to do some research and learn some more about German culture, there is just a whole lot to learn. And mostly what you can find out about is not the day-to-day behavior like those examples I just talked about, but it's more the cultural artifacts and practices. So maybe something like Oktoberfest, where you have this huge festival. People come from all over the world to go to southern Germany and participate in this festival where there are rides and there are activities, and you just have so many people in the streets drinking beer in the tents and paying more for water than for a glass of beer. So those kinds of cultural items are much more researchable. And that's what I want you to do for your assignment. I want you to research some aspect of German culture. So that could be a philosopher, like Nietzsche, you've probably heard of, wrote in German. Kant, there are just so many philosophers that you could look up. Just type in German philosophy or something like that and you'll get a whole list. Same with authors. There are lots of really famous authors that you know of. You have the Grimm brothers, right, who were linguists who went around and documented all the fairy tales so that they could get samples of different varieties of the language. So you could talk about fairy tales. You could talk about Goethe with Faust. Goethe was a very famous German author. He's like the Shakespeare of German. You could do music. There's all kinds of German music, much wider spectrum than just like techno or something, which you might think of if you think of German music. Of course, there are rich food traditions, beer. So Germany has beer purity laws where there are strict standards for what should go into a beer and what you can put in it, what you can't. Let's see, there's of course regional specialties, so you can find different specialty dishes from the different regions. And you could also just talk about structure. So there are buildings, right? Churches in just about every city and town in Germany that are very old and well maintained. And you can talk about building styles, architectural styles. You could talk about places, like specific places, like maybe a particular town. I don't know, maybe you visited a town in Germany and you want to talk about that. Or maybe it's the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest, or the Alps that are in Switzerland, or let's see, maybe the tower on Alexanderplatz in Berlin. Maybe you want to talk about the TV tower. Or you could talk about a historical topic like East Germany. It's pretty broad, but maybe you could talk about the Berlin Wall, or you could talk about the Stasi, or you could talk about terrorism in Germany, the German Autumn, and the Rote Armee Fraktion, the Red Army fraction, who was a terrorist group. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm only scratching the surface of some ideas, but I want you guys to think about what you're interested in and follow that. I had a student who was interested in Zeppelins one time, so presented about Zeppelins, and we all learned a lot from that. So you're going to share with your peers and get them excited about the things that you're interested in.